looking at the Battle of Britain monument, and I'm joined by Edward McManus, who knows everything about it because he was actually on the committee that set it up. So the artist is a man called Paul Day, and he's tried to incorporate huge amounts of detail about the elements that make up what formed the Battle of Britain. So can we start over at this side and talk about what we see here?
We were fortunate in that we had notice of the German bomber formations and fighter formations coming over because our radar picked them up as they formed up over France. But even so, the pilots would often be scrambled 4 or 5 times a day. So in the meantime, they had to get what rest they could. And you can see them here relaxing in so much as you can use that word. And of course, what's obvious from the figures is they're exhausted. You know, in summer, it would be first light perhaps 4 o'clock, and they had to be up. The Germans could come over at any time, and they've got their life jackets on, ready to run to the aircraft and start the engine to take off.
Excellent. And what about the women up here?
Again, the very complex control system was mostly staffed by women of the Women's Royal Air Force, often in underground bunkers. But the radio communication at the time meant that they often heard our own aircraft in combat, and this forged a very strong link between them and the men in the air.
Okay, and moving on to the next section here.
Once the Germans crossed the coast, radar lost them because radar was pointing out to sea, and so therefore we kept track of them by works of the Observer Corps, formed of men and women of above military age who set up vantage points at suitable locations on roofs of factories, on tops of hills, and they monitored the formations and radioed the information back to a central HQ where it was all plotted on a very large table.
Excellent, thank you. On her birthday each year, this statue of Queen Anne is meant to get up off her pedestal and walk up and down the street. I don't know if it really happens, I suddenly doubt it. Anyway, this is a statue of Queen Anne, as from the film The Favourite. She was the queen who was on the throne when St Paul's Cathedral was finished. She also had this street named after her, Queen Anne's Gate, built in the early years of the 18th century. It's got these amazing sort of gargoyle features on all the different building bosses, I think above the windows they're called. Anyway, it's a spectacular street. I think the Sting used to live here at one point. It's got a very large number of blue plaques on it. Blue plaques are for famous peoples who lived in certain places. And this used to be a rat run from people coming from Victoria towards Westminster. So they built a brick wall across here, but then it was taken down. And it's probably my favourite in terms of the beautiful streets in London. And it's called Queen Anne's Gate. So I'm always looking out for the hidden beauty and secret art everywhere. So this is Lamb's Conduit Street, walking down towards Emerald Street. I noticed something on the ground. Have a look at this. It says here, great things lie ahead. So what on earth does that mean? Well, it refers to a community project building, Holborn House, and that's part of the artwork. The artist has communicated with the local community, as it were, and got them to say things about the area which have been immortalised, these great things, in this model of the brickwork that used to be on this site, reversed up there and this way around so you can see it from both sides. And it's talking about connections to the history of the area, what people find important in here, the love that can be shared across the community, and it's a really lovely piece. This extraordinary item in the exhibition at the Guildhall Art Gallery is the bag in which the royal seal was contained, and it dates from the 17th century. It was used by King Charles II himself. Let's zoom in, and you can see at the top here you have the symbol C for Charles, and then next to it and across is the R for Rex the 1670s, and it's just absolutely astonishing, the level of detail across it. So you've got this rather pantomime unicorn here, which I believe represents Scotland, and then facing it and across the other side. Well, first of all, you've got the royal seal in the middle with the three lions for England, and then you've got the lion on this side as well. The sheer quality of detail that's recorded in this is absolutely stunning. And this is the ceremonial bag which would have contained the royal seal of the king. But I just don't believe how it survived all that time in such astonishing quality of workmanship. And unfortunately, the third seal looks like has come over the room, and on the coat of this yeoman of the guards state dress, actually it's got the one for George V on it. Apologies, my mistake, but it has the same message in the middle, Dieu et mon droit. And this is the yeoman of the guard, created by Henry VIII in 1485, for Henry VII rather, at the Battle of Bosworth. It's the oldest of the royal bodyguards and the oldest military corps in existence in Britain. And they're different from, this is the yeoman of the guard, not Roman warder, and the way you tell them apart is the cross belt here that is worn from the left shoulder. So there you go. Okay, so it's a burial of two women. Mehetabel Roebuck died at Sydenham in the 46th year of her age, and in the same vault is deposited the body of her most beloved friend, Mrs. Anne Wilson, wife of Mr. William Wilson of this parish, and died in Sydenham, aged 60 years old, justly esteemed by all who knew her. So first of all, why is she not buried with her husband, Ebenezer Roebuck? And secondly, what relationship did she have with Miss Anne Wilson, this most beloved friend? Clearly, to our mind, things suggest that there may have been a rather close relationship, roommates, as it's called. However, I've no idea if this is a common occurrence. Maybe some historians can give me more information about it. But anyway, I think it's a rather, if it is what we suspect, a lesbian relationship, extraordinary that it could be quite openly discussed at this time. So this is a wonderful church, one of my favourites in the city of London. I'm sorry, I'm changing the subject completely now. Guess what this is? This was designed, if you were the Lord Mayor, you would come to a church every Sunday and you would have your ceremonial sword carried with you. And this is where you would shove it. So it's called a sword rest, and many churches in the city have them. There'd normally be a little cup down here that you would rest. There we are, the sword pommel in, and then the blade will go right up through this hoop at the top. If you were the Lord Mayor, you'd have one made in your own parish church for that year. So you've got the symbol of the City of London at the top. You've got the royal four countries, etc. And I think this is the livery company that he was a member of, the Lord Mayor. This is probably cloth workers, and this is his own private, personal coat of arms. Anyway, Royal Standard, that's what that's called as well. So do you want to tell apart your twisted gimp from your dull check pearl? Well, this guide, created by the Royal School of Needlework, gives you the full information. This is like a test pattern created by the Royal School, and if you look very closely against each of these, you can see exactly what they are. So twisted gimp, ironic, it's got some twists on it. Pearl, embossed plate, crinkled plate. I wonder if all the different elements are actually represented in the needlework shown here. I suspect they are. Anyway, I know nothing about needlework. I can't even sew a button on without it falling off in a few days afterwards, so there I go. They are in the gold and silver wire drawers exhibition. Let's look at this over here. This is a pall for someone's funeral. After you're a member of the Fishmongers organisation, this will be put on your coffin if you died as the master while you were in your year of office. It dates from around 1512 to 1530. Just look at the sheer quality of embroidery. Oh, it's absolutely stunning. And finally, If you're a fan of Oliver Cromwell, then they have an example of his dressing gown here. So I don't know what type of needlework this is compared to the instructions over here. But anyway, this is a piece of Oliver Cromwell's dressing gown. This is the causes of death within the City of London, including such things as one person died of worms, one of wind, 4 of phtisic thrush teeth, 15 people died of teeth, stopping in the stomach, rupture, rising of the lights, that means your stomach, guts coming out of you, griping in the guts, accidental killing, dropsy, cough, convulsion, consumption, aged, 19 people with apoplexy. Each week they would list the causes of death. How do you know it's Christmas at St Paul's? Well, you've got the reindeer. There you are. And this gentleman is going to give us a 2-minute potted introduction to the history of reindeer.
Okay, so here we have Christmas, and she's a female reindeer. And this is Cupid over here having a little lie down. He's a boy. As you can see, this is the only deer species in the world where ladies also get antlers. Okay, now she is what we call a tidy bedroom. So she's cleaned her antlers perfectly. She's cleaned the velvet off because the growth is finished for the season. Unlike the boys who are a bit lazier, he has not bothered to clean the velvet off his antlers. But to be fair to the boys, they know they're going to get a new set in about a month's time because they're replaced every year. And it's the fastest growing bone in the world. The ladies do it in 4 months. Boys take 6 months. But the boys do get bigger antlers generally. And unlike our red deer, they're bigger when you're younger and they get smaller with age. A bit like us. We thin, we get, it's an age thing. And as you can see here, she's chewing the cud.
Oh my God, that's what chewing the cud means then?
Yep. So they're a ruminant, and when you live in the Arctic, that food on the floor there is called lichen. That's all you get. It's the only mammal in the world that can eat lichen and survive. The only mammal. And you need to find this when you're in the Arctic. So, again, reindeer, the only mammal in the world that can see in ultraviolet light.
No way.
And that glows green under ultraviolet light. But they can also smell it from 2 kilometres under 3 foot of snow. That's how important it is. But being a harsh environment, they will lose 40% of their body mass through the winter months. These guys are hardcore. Hardcore. As fast as a racehorse, jump a 6-foot fence, good swimmers, the ultimate deer of all time. And that's why Father Christmas has them.
And so I've got this range of equipment to demonstrate what Roman bathing was like. Well, first of all, the building itself, it's in 3 parts. This is the frigidarium. This is where you would have exercised briefly, maybe undressed just to the apoditarium outside. This is the tepidarium, where you would have been comfortable, sat in the alcoves over here and done business, and over there is the hot room, the caldarium with the furnace next to it, where you would have been really roasted. So hot, in fact, that you would have needed to wear these type of clogs to protect your skin, otherwise it would have been scalded off by the heat of the very, very hot furnace next door to it. You've also got here lamps to light your way. Now, the Romans had no soap, apparently, so what they had instead were these, which would contain oils, probably olive oil that would be scented. You would at various points cover your body with them. By the way, the Romans also didn't believe in body hair. We'll come back to that later as well. But the lack of body hair meant that you could easily scrape the oil off of your body using this. It's called a strigil or a scraper. And if you were an athlete, people, or maybe a gladiator, I've read that people will be hanging around you in the baths, and if you'd scrape the sweat off your skin, like this, whatever, you'd flick it down on the ground, and it would be picked up, and people would put it into little pots and sell it to women as a type of a face cream. Well, lucky I'm not an athlete, that's all I'll say for that. Other things that you've got here, this is the cloth that you would wrap around yourself. When you entered the bathhouse, especially public ones, not private ones like this, you'd have a slave with you called a capsarii, whose job it was to look after your stuff, as bathhouses were notorious for theft. Okay, what else have we got here as well? Ah, yes, this is called, this is a series of instruments that you would use for various aspects of the bathing experience. So you've got here the tweezers, that would be used to pluck your nose hair or ear hair. By the way, one Roman poet was living above a bathhouse and complained that the shrieking made from people who's having their hair removed was keeping him from doing his work. This device would be used to clean your toenails and fingernails. And this little, like a spoon, but it's actually designed for removing earwax. So that's the various elements that made up the bathing experience. Human sperm was first discovered as an invisible ink in this very building by, now I kid you not, by this man, Sir Cumming. Right, what happened was he was the very first chief of the Secret Service, and I don't know quite how he discovered that it was, maybe a stroke of luck, as you might say, but he discovered that it works really well. There was one small problem that didn't come out until a bit later, and he sent a message out to all his men, obviously, in the field, which is that every man his own stylus. But unfortunately, what he hadn't catered for is the fact that it goes off. And basically, after a few days out on the paper, it used to give off this incredibly awful smell. So he had to, as it were, withdraw his orders. And that's why we no longer use human sperm as an invisible ink. He was an incredible man, so many more stories. He cut his own leg off with a penknife, allegedly, when trapped in a car accident. Enough about that. Come on my spy tours and you'll find out all more stories about him. Final stop on our City of London tour today, which is in the Bank of England, and we're looking at the gold selection here. Right, so what have we got here? This bar here, number 11, come and have a quick look, zoom in on it. This is the actual gold bar that was presented to Queen Elizabeth II for her coronation. It's the official gold bar belonging to the monarch. And it was given to her, well, Johnson Matthey. You may have heard of them. They had the famous bullion robbery in Heathrow. They gave it to her, and it was certified as 9999 quality, weighing 12 troy ounces. It's not the highest quality you can get. You can actually get 99999, but it's still pretty high quality as well. Now, the word carat, you often get carats as described. They're actually named after these objects over here, number 6. Carats are actually it's an abbreviation of the word carob. And carob beans, in ancient times, they believed they were all the same weight, and therefore they could use them to measure gold weight. That's where the word carat gold, in terms of gold, comes from as well. We have over here, number 1, the earliest known gold coin in the world. It's an electrum coin, which is an alloy of silver and gold, dating from 650 BC, from ancient Greece, and Lydian section as well. We also have over here, these two items here, number 3, are gold, Roman gold. They're gold bars that were left in modern day Hungary, and they were found in 1887. They'd been buried for some 1,500 years. Before they were uncovered. Again, very, very rare to find genuine gold Roman bars with original Roman plaques on them as well. And we've got the chocolate gold here, not quite the same as the rest of them as well. Oh no, actually this is a Rothschild bicentenary bar. We've got some modern day gold being used in circuit boards as well to demonstrate the wide variety of use. But essentially, a credible variety of different artifacts associated with the history of gold on display in the Bank of England. Thank you very much. So forget about your Pret, the Starbucks, the Costa. This is where it all began 370 years ago. Around the edge somewhere of this churchyard of St Michael Cornhill, a young Smyrnan merchant called Pasquale Rosé set up a tiny little stall against the edge of the churchyard. But this stall changed the world. It became the very first in the country coffee house. Now, coffee houses were so important to the history of this country because they allowed people to get together, formerly repressed under Charles I, without being drunk, to take on discussions of anything, trade, commerce, intellectual pursuits, academic studies, astrology, astronomy, scientific endeavour. Everything was enabled by the coffee houses, so much so they were known as penny universities. It all started on this spot. This is the grand old Duke of York, who had 10,000 men. His name was Henry Frederick, and he was the younger son of George III. And as you can see here, he was the head of the army. He marched them up and he marched them down again, as they say. But there was a break in his service. Look, he was here between 1795 and 1809, and then again between 1811 and 1827. So what happened to the Duke of York for those 2 years? Well, the answer was that he was in disgrace because of a sex scandal. How on earth could that happen to a Duke of York? So what happened was his mistress was accused of selling commissions into the army. Bribery of furniture, I think her name was, and he got caught up in it as well. By the way, we are in St James's Park, just over here. Buckingham Palace is in that way. This is Carlton, whatever it is called. And yes, he's at the top of here. He was then eventually exonerated. So after having spent 2 years, in disgrace, he was finally allowed to become the head of the army again. He was apparently an able administrator, much loved by his men, and this monument was put up to him. Carlton House Terrace, that's where we are. Thank you very much. Back at the Battle of Britain Memorial here, right by the banks of the River Thames, by the London Eye. So Edward McManus here is going to tell us a bit more about this second part of the relief.
Here we have a trench dug in a school playing field, as it happened, because at the middle of 1940 the air raid precautions weren't really fully developed, and here you can see children, and you can see by their hairstyles that it's not modern ones, who think that the World War II was laid on for their benefit. It's all very exciting. Yes, and you can visualise, from their expressions, what's going on up above. The fighters whirling around.
They're in the open air. They're not undercover.
They're not undercover.
But they're in a trench in a football field or something.
Absolutely right.
Or in a sports plant. Okay.
So, the noise and the spectacle was something they never forget.
Right. Yeah, my mother-in-law was chased by a V1 over Hertfordshire. It missed her, which some ways I regret. This memorial is built out of Christmas crackers. If you don't believe me, let's hear the story. I am in Finsbury Square, just by the City of London, and this memorial is dedicated to, well, the mother of Tom and Walter Smith, and it was their father, Tom Smith, who in 1847 he'd been importing these twisted sweets from France called bonbons, and the story goes that he was at the fireplace, threw a cracking log on the fire that sparkled and blew up with such a bang that he thought, wow, that's a great idea, let's put that into these bonbons, and he invented the Christmas cracker. And this monument was erected by his sons to his wife. There are actually 3 sons. There's one called Henry as well. I don't know why Henry hasn't been included in here. Maybe he fell out with the family. But whatever happened, this is all about Christmas crackers. He had a huge factory around the corner from here. He still provides the annual Christmas crackers that are presented to the royal family every Christmas. Imagine Meghan and Harry cracking one between them next to King Charles. Maybe one day that might happen, you never know. But anyway, there was a huge factory around the corner from here, and sadly it burnt down, but it employed hundreds of people. They specialised in different markets. So they had one for the suffragettes, they had one for what's his name, that famous clown, the most famous clown in the world. I'll remember after, so I'll put it into the note. Anyway, this is where the Christmas cracker was commemorated, in this memorial here in Finsbury Square. And I've just noticed this rather wonderful fireplace, which, as you can see, has been marked by the estates to avoid it being nicked and not identifiable. And I've looked at the details inside the fireplace. I see these rather remarkable sphinxes here, both in front view and from the side. And I've also noticed the ceiling here, the moulding, also has sphinxes on it as well. But they are quite different from each other. So I'm wondering whether the moulded ceilings here, perhaps a little bit later. This building dates from the 1770s in Harley Street. And if you look closely at the sphinx here, for example, look at the wing at the back. right raising up, and also the hairstyle with a sort of almost like a pharaonic headdress on it. And you compare that to the ones up here. The wings are behind their back. There's no hair curling down in front of them, and they've got like a lamp above them as well. So I have to look into this more detail, but essentially look out for the details. You can often find things that surprise you here. I'm here to tell you the true story of the lions of Trafalgar Square. So they were put up 30 years after Nelson was placed on the column, and the man who was given the commission had never done any sculpture before. His name was Landseer. He was a famous artist, but not a sculptor. He was desperate to get a real-life lion to model the work on, so he applied to London Zoo. But they said, you can't have a live one, but if one dies, we'll give it to you. You had to wait 2 years, and one was delivered dead, stinking, decomposing to his studio, where he then started to model these 4 non-identical lions around Trafalgar Square. He took several years to complete them, and he got it wrong in one case. If you look closely, you'll note that the back of this lion curves in slightly, whereas in fact, I've not seen it myself, real-life lions curve up when they are lying down, so that was wrong. He also got the paws wrong, apparently. I think because the time he actually designed the paws, the bodies had decomposed so much and there wasn't really much to look at. The other thing is that the metal that was used to create these wonderful, iconic London lions was taken from the ships that had been defeated in various battles by Nelson. So we had a full circle here. Nelson's ships, destruction, led to the creation of these rather wonderful lions of London that everyone loves to see. And I've got 2 iconic Harry Potter film locations to share with you today. One, against this very wall stood Ron in Deathly Hallows Part 1, I think, literally just here with his wand, peering around the corner to see whether any wizards were arriving. And he stunned 3 people here, Mafalda Hopkirk, Reg Catamol, and the third one who I can't remember. They were dragged, stunned, through the doorway, which now has a metal grill on it over here. In the film, I think it was CGI to appear like a wooden screen. And from then, Ron, Harry and Hermione took a sample of their clothing or whatever and used Polyjuice Potion to transform themselves into them in order to then get into the Ministry of Magic and steal back the Horcrux from the neck of evil, Imelda Staunton. So that's the first Harry Potter location. However, in the Order of the Phoenix, this is where a phone box is, roughly where that doorway is now. And in the scene, it's where Harry and Mr. Weasley have come through Westminster Underground tube station. They walk through the street underneath this archway here. They get into the phone box that's just here, and then they type in the special alphanumeric numbers into the phone keypad. Do you know what they are? It is 62442, which spells out the word magic. And I understand that when the book's translated into other languages, every single version uses the different numbers for what the word magic means in those languages. So, for example, in German, the word magic is Zauber, and that's what it would be. So I don't know what the numbers would be, but anyway, that's what they do. They also put a fake archway halfway across the street just here as well for the film. But this is where both iconic film scenes were genuinely shot. Jack the Ripper was investigated here because this is the Great Scotland Yard Hotel. It's on the site of the former headquarters of the Metropolitan Police. This clock, by the way, is connected to Alice in Wonderland, and everything in this hotel has been themed around policing, criminality, detection, and all sorts of other illegal activities. But there's also special art in the hotel as well. So let's have a look around. It only opened a few years ago, and they've got incredible details in here. Look at the historic police collections here, including a violent police baton, an original police helmet, some poison as used by Dr. Crippen, for example, cameras, microscopes. Very Christmassy here today as well. Oh, I forgot to show you. They've added some handcuffs onto the Christmas decorations here as well in a clearly attempt to theme the hotel again. And they've even put police helmets on top of the Christmas trees. Okay, so what else have they got here? They've got some stamps, some pearly stamps of kings and queens, made of genuine pearls that would have been sewn into pearly kings and queens uniforms in the shape of the stamps. They've also got the queen here too. What else have they got? Well, this is prison art. Oh, the kings are down the corridor too. Excellent. They've also got prison art. There's a charity called the Cursed Trust who go into prisons, and as part of the rehabilitation efforts with prisoners, I love the accent here, by the way, they encourage them to take up art, become very creative, and then have exhibitions which they sell their art, and they've put a sample of their artworks in here. So let's have a look at the variety. This is carved of soap. Some of it is very sad, I have to say, this prison art. That shows you what the name of the artwork is and which prison it comes from as well. Then more images. Time flies. Freedom to express. They're in prison, but they can still make art with their mouth. Inside, this is an explanation. You can pause and read this about what the Cursed Trust is all about. This is made, one strike and you're out, actually made of matchsticks. I think these are made of another type of paper, maybe, but it's a swan. Another study called Untitled. Then this is about the dangers of locking your emotions up. I think again this has been made of matchsticks. Another chained book here as well. More prison art. Okay, this is someone. Gate, please. Police brutality as expressed by prisoner. This is a prison break. It's actually fabric. It's a teacup with biscuits in a pot made of cloth. Checkered past, and finally inner brain branching out. There's also a fantastic restaurant here as well called Exsted, which I'll do a separate video about later. We are in Masons Avenue in the City of London. We are looking at the old Dr. Butler's Head, a really interesting pub, which some of you may have spent some time in. It's a lovely place to drink at. It's got an interesting history. Look at the sign, Dr. Butler, Dr. William Butler. Now there's a Latin inscription around his head here, which says, in English, it says, because I've got a degree in Latin, it says, William Butler of Cambridge, the foremost medic of his time. Gulielmus Butler, Cantabrian Huis Aetatis Princeps Medicorum. There we go. Now, he was a doctor at the time of King James I, who had succeeded Queen Elizabeth at the end of the 16th century. Yes. And he suffered from a bad back. So luckily, Dr. Butler wasn't a very good doctor, to be honest, but he managed to cure King James's backache, and he therefore became popular within the royal circle. Now, he made extra money as well through a chain of inns and taverns that he created, selling his special medicine that he created at the time. And his medicine was, I've got a picture of it here somewhere. Apologies for the delay here. Where's it gone? Okay, here it is. So this is Dr. Butler, this is his image, the same one that we see on the pub sign as well. But this is his special ale that he licensed and sold and made his fortune from. It's called his purging ale. Oh. And it was designed as a medical treatment. Basically, all the ingredients of it, which include things like aniseed, sarsaparilla, caraway seeds, licorice, maidenhair, agrimony, sarsaparilla. If you would have it more purging, increase or double the proportion of cenopods. So as you might guess, it had an incredibly emetic effect on your guts. It was designed to basically make you explode on the toilet as soon as you've taken it. And it became so...
Maidenhair in there?
Yes, yeah. I'm not sure quite what that is. I think it's a type of grass. Let's leave it there, shall we? But anyway, so he made a fortune selling his licensed Dr. Butler's Purging Ale. And this is the only pub that remains with his name on it. No, unfortunately, I have shown this menu to the pub, and they want to take a copy of it to put up in the pub background. So we're going to give them a copy to have anyway. But he also then, as he was a doctor of King James I. Now James I had two sons. His first son, Henry Frederick, the older son, was a perfect king material. He was handsome, he was athletic, intelligent, learned in scholars, in military matters, very popular as well. Sadly, he died at the age of 18 of a suspected poisoning. Now, I'm just guessing here, but perhaps if Dr. Butler had actually been a bit better, not just selling his purging ale, we may well have had him succeed James I as a following king instead of his younger brother instead, Charles I. Now, Charles I was one of the worst kings we'd ever had. He fell out with Parliament. He argued about taxation, about the right to rule, the divine monarchy, etc. And he ended up having his head chopped off by Parliament in 1649, so unpopular. And that was the end of the monarchy for 11 years. So perhaps if Dr. Butler had been a bit better doctor, the course of English history might have been changed. Thank you very much. These are men's gloves from the 1610 era. James I, James VI of Scotland, and this was a very interesting fashion of the time, that glove fingers, especially for men, were made exceedingly long, much longer, and they could actually be maybe a centimetre or so longer than they were as actual fingers, which were meant to look like Queen Elizabeth I's famously elegant hands, which she herself loved to admire. So these fashionable gloves were made longer, that fake fingertip at the end, to copy the style that Queen Elizabeth I loved. Now, from one Queen Elizabeth to another, just look at the sheer detail on these. We have an actual glove worn by Queen Elizabeth II herself for her coronation. And this was worn during the coronation event by the Queen. The cuff has a symbolic roses, shamrocks, thistles and acorns. The glove, it has the royal cipher on the back of the hand, E2R, under the crown of St. Edward. And yeah, it's meant to represent the whiteness, purity and integrity, referring back to King Edward the Confessor. It also reminds that the sceptre, held gently in a gloved hand, is a reminder of holding power. This is Roman London, all that's left anyway in Noble Street in the city. So this shows around the year 200, as it says, the Roman wall, and then this is the border of what was a fort built much earlier. Let me show you what we can see down here. So this little rectangle is part of the original fort, and the wall you see here was part of the fort foundations as well. That was built in about the year 110 AD for the Emperor Hadrian. He built Hadrian's Wall up in the Scottish borders. And then it was sort of much safer later on, because it was as a garrison in here. This was the fort, maybe 1,000 soldiers here. They would be rotating, guarding the governor, etc. Then in about the year 200, they built a wall, and they reused some of the fort, which was dismantled at the time, maybe just make a postern. So you see here, this wall here was the extra section built on later, I think, for the wall itself. This was destroyed, bombing in the Second World War opened this area up. So the walls you see here are actually Victorian warehouses, built obviously much later on. But this garden has been preserved. It belongs to one of the ancient livery companies whose hall is in here. They're called the Plasterers. And let's show you a little bit more about what you can see. Right, moving further along. By the way, there are bees living here as well. And this is a map of Roman London. So you see here, this is where the fort was, right at the boundary of the north-western corner of it. And this is the original extent of the Roman wall. And you can still see the wall in other places as well. But essentially, this is Roman London. This is not a Starbucks mermaid. This is, in fact, dated 1669. This is the Mercer's Maid. She is the symbol of the most important, the number one ancient livery company in the city of London. What are the liveries then? Well, they control trade. They're the ancient guilds. The earliest one with the Royal Charter is from 1155, the weavers. Mercers are number one because they dealt with, well, the word mercer comes from the Latin word mercator, which means trader. But in fact, they really dealt with wool. Wool being a huge wealth export commodity from Britain in medieval times. If you know about the wool sack in Parliament, in front of it, that's demonstrating the value of wool to the nation. And they own buildings all over the city of London. They were created number one company, and they own a lot of streets in Covent Garden, for example. But this is, if you see her or her symbol on a building in London, that means it is owned by the number one ancient trade guild, the Mercer's Company, and here's a bit more about it for you to read. This toy was a suspected bomb in World War II. So I'm in the Guards Museum here, full of amazing objects. And this particular section is all about the Grenadier Guards. A man called Bill Sherrard, or Sherry. He was in a tank regiment that was sent out in the Second World War on D-Day into France. And as they were trundling down the road, empty road, they saw this doll in the middle of the road. They thought it might be like an IED nowadays, a bomb that would have blown up underneath the tank. So he got out. He started throwing stones at it to check if it would actually rigged to blow up. Luckily it didn't, so eventually he walked over, poked it and then picked it up, and it was empty. It was actually just a toy. And it became his mascot. He hung it up inside his tank, and like you have air conditioners, air fresheners in your car, swinging around in front of you, and it stayed with him throughout the war, until eventually he took it to Nuremberg, where he was stationed for the trials. So this doll witnessed World War II and witnessed the Nuremberg trials. He was actually a guard for the war criminals in the trial itself, so he probably had this as a lucky mascot in his pocket during that horrific time. James Bond's perfume and Ian Fleming's come from this shop, founded in this very location in 1730. This is Floris, and they have given me some samples of the perfume as well. There's a museum at the back. I'm going to show you the perfume museum. Okay, so this is founded from Minorca in 1730. Okay, famous people who've left some things here. Marilyn Monroe. She used a secret name, Blas, but they've written her proper name here when she ordered 5 bottles of the famous special perfume Rose in 1959. This is Ian Fleming and his favourite perfume, number 89. They also last year created a new perfume to celebrate 007. This is a letter from Florence Nightingale to about the Crimean War. And this is the only receipt they have from Mrs. Winston Churchill buying perfume from this shop also. What else do they have as well? Well, they've got some perfumes they made here. They made Oscar Wilde's perfume. It's called Malmaison Encore, because the original one cannot be recreated. You can read about it here. It was his favourite perfume. We've also got, what else have we got here? The Bonaparte wife, the Duchess of Florence. She loved the Violette one as well. Vetiver, loved by Laurence Olivier, found it here. Essentially, come to Floris to find James Bond's perfume, Marilyn Monroe's, and many more people. Thank you so much. Jimi Hendrix allegedly led to these parakeets in St James's Park, a breeding pair. Apparently he was meant to have brought over here in the 1960s from Seattle, or wherever he was living at the time. And yeah, they are here, amazingly, huge numbers of them. And the tourists love to come here and hand them little bits of fruit, whatever, and they're squawking away here. I personally think it's probably an urban myth that Jimi Hendrix brought them over. However, they're a lovely thing to hold up and maybe have landing on you. The contrast with them is, of course, these horrible pigeons, rats with wings, as Ken Livingstone used to call them, who also try and get in, muscle in on the beautiful parakeets' food. But anyway, St James's Park set out for King Charles II. There are also, but I haven't got them today, pelicans here as well, which were a gift of the Russian ambassador. Anyway, just admire this lovely group. I've got a lovely bunch of parakeets. So this is the remains of the most elaborately equipped Iron Age warrior to have been found in England. Found in 2008, and it's now in the Chichester Museum. So this is what his helmet looks like now, and it had 2 very elaborate side pieces hanging off it. Open work crests, this is his body, and they've managed to recreate what they think his helmet looked like. Look at this, what an amazing piece of Iron Age metalwork. Imagine seeing this in front of you in battle coming towards you. It must have been very, very scary. And here is a reconstruction of, they call him the mystery warrior. We've also got here some vessels that were found with him, along with his sword that's been bent in two, violently killed, as they called it here. You can read this. And it's an amazing find here in Chichester. Have you heard of the 40 Elephants? They were an all-female gang of criminals who would break into West End's stores and steal objects hidden in their clothing. They were called the Elephants, allegedly because their clothing had bags in it, which meant they would walk like big elephant trunk legs as they're walking around. So what this bar contains are the images of the 40 elephants reflected around the corners of the screen. You've got here an example of the type of jewellery that the elephants would steal from a supermarket or West End store by smashing the glass and taking the emerald jewels. You've got an image here of their leader as painted by Nicola Green, and you've also got examples of the sort of objects that the 40 thieves would steal from their West End stores as well. And the pièce de résistance here is the gold tree artwork over here, which genuinely contains, and I have had to check and count them all, and one is very hidden, 40 elephants. So they were very active in the Elephant and Castle area of London in up to the Second World War, but they started in late Victorian times as well. All women, and they would break into department stores using high-powered cars or just steal stuff in their capacious pockets. That is the 40 elephants. This tankard, in fact it's called a mazer, tells you off for drinking too much. It dates from about 1380, if you can believe it, and we are in the Victoria and Albert Museum, and the inscription around the side of it says, "Hold your tongue and say ye best, and let your neighbours sit in rest. Whoso lusty God to please, let his neighbours live in ease." So it's actually maple wood, and the boss underneath it has the sacred monogram of Jesus. It was really designed to emphasize your religious and your moral duties, and a warning against dissipation. But imagine 1380, incredible survivor. We also have one of the very first forks ever discovered in this country as well, and it is over here. Right, and this fork dates from a time when forks were very new. It's actually from 1632, and it's the earliest known hallmarked fork. The hallmarks show you who the makers were. In this case, it's Richard Cross, and so basically forks for eating meat were unknown in England until the early 17th century. And to the surprise of visitors from Italy and France, who were well used to such manners at the table, although there had been a sort of primitive fork, but it was only used for sticky desserts, and it was called a sacket fork, and they've been around since the medieval period. I am in the third most important of all the ancient trade guilds or livery companies of the City of London, in their hall. My office used to be just around the corner from here. These are the Drapers. Here are some famous members of the Drapers, I believe. I'm here for a charity dinner, and lots of very valuable paintings and possessions in the hall here. Let's walk through it, go upstairs. I might put some music on here as well. Okay, this is in the style of Romney. Oh my God, this is Charles I. War I and War II. Look at the marble used in this hall, these pilasters, these Egyptian style monuments. There's some busts here. This is a bust of Oh yes, the Duke of York, not the current Duke of York, but the old one, brother of Henry William George IV rather. That's Queen Victoria. That's Milton. No idea who that is. Uh-oh, I'm missing the music. I have to wait. Okay, look at this. This isn't even the main hall. It's just an antechamber. We've got old Duke of Wellington here. And we've got Lord Nelson here. Okay, I'm going to stop by the entrance. Oh, I missed that. I was in the toilet, I'm afraid. This is officially the sweariest place in London. What is it? It's Old Billingsgate Fish Market. It's opposite the Shard, Tower Bridge in the distance, and it was famous for the bad language of the workers here, the Billingsgate fishwives amongst others. It's got the symbols of the City of London here, Fish Fungers Hall, which is just over the other side of it. But literally, even in Dr. Johnson's language, Billingsgate was used for swearing. You couldn't stop here without your ears being offended by the violent language of the staff who worked here. Synonymous with swearing. Welcome to Billingsgate Ancient Fish Market. So these are all electric powered racing cars. This entire shop is designed to show off electric power. It's showing the latest technology. It's actually owned, we're in Covent Garden, it's owned by a man who owns a cake shop down the road. He has 30 cake shops, that's right, and he's decided, because he converted the roofs of his vans to electrically solar, refrigerate the cakes as they're called Lola's cupcakes, advert for them here. But he has created this entire shop, and in sunny days, these two panels outside power the entire house. All the toys that are sold here are examples of solar toys to promote the concept of solar energy for families, etc. And they've got some amazing industrial style solar panels up here as well. This one actually follows the sun. It also reflects on both sides, so it reflects up from the ground, reflected light, to get as maximum power as possible from the sunlight available. This is powered by the solar powers outside as well. And you've got some portable chargers here too that can be used to phone your phones. This is a huge one. It's actually the same as the one over there. And it powers into this box, which means it's like a battery that can take the power and reuse it as well. But essentially, this entire shop is run as a service by the man who owns Lola's Cupcakes to promote the concept of solar power. And it's called Next Day Solar. And I think it's an inspiration to us all to try and encourage greater use of solar as the cheapest free source of power in the world. It's where all power ultimately comes from, is sunlight. And come to Covent Garden and find this wonderful example of how solar power can change the world. 1 million people lined the streets for the funeral of these tragic boys, one of whom, this one here, William Beckham, was the best sailor of the lot of them. He was made the captain of the boat, and they all died drowned. So William Beckham was the brother of David Beckham's great-grandfather, and he himself only narrowly escaped the tragedy. The Scout movement had only been formed 5 years before the disaster, and as I said, 1 million people left down the streets. It became front page news in all the papers. Absolutely horrific disaster, and they're now all buried here, along with these war graves as well, in Nunhead Cemetery. And I'm just here thinking about them all. Just imagine 1 million people lying in the streets for this horrific tragedy off the Isle of Sheppey, 4th of August 1912. 7 men survived their ship being sunk in 1940 and were left in this raft. They lasted 70 days before being found, and one by one, 5 of them had died. They cut deep marks into the side of it to mark off the days that they were trapped in here. And the 2 men who were left alive at the end, Roy Widdicombe and Bob Tapscott. Roy was then sunk himself and drowned in 1941, and Bob killed himself in 1963. Imagine being stuck on this raft for 70 days. This is a genuine World War II SOE, Special Operations Executive map, that will be given to operatives who have been parachuted into enemy occupied territory as volunteers working for the British forces. And it belongs to my brother-in-law. It was owned by his father, John Hay Kirkpatrick Shaw, and he gave it to him after the war, apparently. He's just lent it to me to show, and I'm absolutely astonished. It's genuine silk, printed, and it could often be so thin that it would be put inside the linings of clothing of people who were sent, so it could be hidden if they were arrested. But it shows major journey routes and railway, I suppose, and main boating links. This is Greece, Turkey, Bulgaria. So this is a genuine World War II SOE map. This is Saving Private Ryan come to life. We're in the D-Day Museum in Southsea, and I've got the pencil here that started the invasion. Look at this display cabinet here. Item number 2 has written on it, this pencil started the invasion, started D-Day, because it was written by the man who actually used the pencil to sign the order for the forces to go across the channel. Other things here are condoms issued to soldiers to cover their weapons during the wartime. Some seasick tablets given to sailors, soldiers to cross it, American ones. A unused sick bag from D-Day as well, and these are the actual letters issued to be read out to all soldiers. One from Eisenhower to the American soldiers. Feel free to pause and read it. And the second one from Monty to be read out to all the British troops as well. It's an incredible place to remember. Please come and visit it. I'm David Harrick. I am the London Spy. This is London, and please follow me if you like the videos. Click on the links to follow my TikTok, and come and see me at one of my tours.